Okay, let's talk about something we all do every single day, throwing stuff away. But what if your garbage suddenly became a weapon in a major trade war? Well, believe it or not, that's exactly what's happening right now in a growing dispute between the US and Canada.
So get a load of this number, almost 3.5 million tons. That is the staggering amount of trash that crosses the border from Ontario, Canada, into Michigan. Every single year. It's a figure that's almost impossible to really wrap your head around. So to put it another way, picture this, a convoy of over 400 tractor trailers just packed with compacted garbage driving from Canada into Michigan every single day. And well, this massive one-way flow of waste has, you guessed it, created a really high-stakes conflict, sparking what some people are now calling a cross-border garbage war.
Right, so here we are in 2026, and what used to be a quiet trade corridor has just blown up into a full-on geopolitical battleground. It's become a real battle of wills, pitting Michigan's governor against Ontario's premier in this high-stakes fight over, of all things, landfill space. Now, what's really fascinating here is the sheer scale of this dependency. Just look at this chart. Canadian trash makes up more than 14% of everything dumped in Michigan landfills. You know, for decades, Ontario has basically relied on Michigan as a cheap and convenient place to export its garbage problem. So you have to ask, how did we get here? Well, it wasn't some grand conspiracy. The entire situation really just hinges on a simple but incredibly powerful economic force that has been acting like a giant magnet for years.
And that brings us right to the heart of the issue, the central question driving this entire conflict. What on earth makes Michigan such an irresistible destination for millions of tons of Canadian refuse, year after year after year?
And this table just lays it all out plain as day. It's the money. Michigan state surcharge, what they call a tipping fee, is just 36 cents a ton. 36 cents. Now compare that to almost $5 in Ohio, $13 in Wisconsin, or, get this, over $100 in Ontario. I mean, with that kind of price difference, it's actually cheaper to truck trash hundreds of miles across an international border than it is to deal with it at home. So, this huge economic imbalance has finally boiled over into a political showdown. We are literally watching a chess match unfold right now, with Michigan's Governor Gretchen Whitmer and Ontario's Premier Doug Ford making these big strategic moves to protect their own turf.
And what's crucial to understand is that we have two totally different strategies at play here. In Michigan, Governor Whitmer is pushing to jack up that tipping fee from 36 cents all the way to $5. That's a massive increase, designed to make dumping in Michigan really expensive. Meanwhile, across the border, Premier Ford is using the threat of U.S. trade tariffs as a kind of political cover to fast-track new landfills in Ontario.
You see, Michigan's goal isn't really to stop all Canadian trash cold. It's about getting rid of that massive financial incentive. As the state's environmental director put it, this is all about creating a level playing field, so Michigan is no longer the default bargain basement dumping ground for the whole region.
At the same time, Ontario's government is spinning a completely different story. Premier Ford is pointing his finger at Washington, basically arguing that because of this threat of a U.S. trade war and potential tariffs on trash, Ontario has to achieve waste sovereignty by building its own landfills, and they have to do it fast.
This whole political strategy really came to a head in the small town of Dresden, Ontario. And you gotta see this timeline. In March of 2024, the government promised a full environmental study for a new landfill. Okay, great. But then the landfill owner sued them. And after that, well, the government did a complete 180. They introduced a new law, Bill 5, that specifically exempted that exact project from the environmental review they had just promised. It was a move that you can imagine absolutely shocked environmentalists and local residents.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a second, because this isn't just about a few landfills anymore. This local garbage fight has now become a key bargaining chip in the super high-stakes renegotiation of North American trade. And it's all centered around one crucial acronym, USMCA.
This right here. This is the critical trade rule that's at the heart of the whole problem. It's called national treatment, and it basically means Michigan can't discriminate. If they raise the fee for Canadian trash, they have to raise it for Michigan residents and businesses too. And that, well, that makes Governor Whitmer's proposed $5 fee a much tougher political pill to swallow back home. And the timing here just could not be more critical. The entire USMCA trade deal is up for a mandatory review in July of 2026.
This deadline is raising the stakes for everybody, turning this seemingly small issue about waste into a major test case for the future of all U.S.-Canada trade relations.
So what we really have here is a perfect storm of instability. You've got regulatory volatility, with politicians just changing the rules on a whim. You've got trade protectionism, with garbage being used as a pawn. And then underneath it all is the hard reality of infrastructure scarcity. Michigan only has about 21 years of landfill space left at the rate we're going. So where do we go from here? I mean, what happens next? Both sides are facing a ticking clock, and the decisions they make in the coming months are going to have huge consequences for decades to come as they try to navigate the brink of a full-blown capacity crisis.
For Ontario, the stakes are pretty much existential. If Michigan keeps taking its trash, the province has until about 2037 before it runs out of landfill space. But what if that border slams shut tomorrow? Well, then Ontario runs out of room by 2034. That 3-year difference could spark a massive public health and sanitation crisis.
Looking ahead, the outcome here is probably going to fall into one of 3 buckets. First, you could see a compromise. Maybe Michigan passes a more modest fee hike. Second, things could escalate, where the U.S. federal government steps in with tariffs or an outright ban. Or third, you could see a fundamental restructure, forcing Ontario to finally build the domestic landfill and recycling infrastructure it's been putting off for decades.
But no matter which one of those scenarios plays out, one thing is absolutely for sure. The basic economics of this waste corridor have been permanently changed. For both Michigan and Ontario, the decades-long era of treating the border like an invisible line for cheap garbage disposal is officially over.
And it really leaves us with a final, pretty provocative thought, doesn't it? This whole mess started with something we barely think about, our garbage. If a system this mundane can be totally upended by politics and become a tool in a trade war, it really forces us to ask, what other invisible supply chains that our whole society depends on are way more vulnerable than we realize?